Convene the meeting and call the meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. So Commissioner Alabak,
Present.
Commissioner Blattner,
Here.
Commissioner Metzler, Commissioner Funky. She did say she was not going to be able to make it tonight. Commissioner Morrell,
Here.
What about Alex?
yes, Alex, sorry.
And Travis, did you get the Matt's question about sending him the link?
No, I did not.
He was out there somewhere pleading for a link.
Oh,
Do we have a quorum?
we
Otherwise, we can't have the meeting.
I don't think so.
need
We have 3.
Matt. Oh, I just see Matt just appeared. So
Ah, there we go.
So do we have Matt?
Matt, do you have a voice? There he goes.
Connecting to audio, yeah. So now we have a quorum, yay.
Okay, so are we done with the roll call?
You have to roll call Matt.
as soon as he gets in there.
Okay.
Kimberly, that's a very nice tree behind you.
Oh, thank you.
Travis, how much of the online commenting do I have to read?
I will check. I will check. Let me look real quick.
Okay. For my chair's virtual meeting statement and instructions for public comment.
There are not currently any comments for the public comment period, but the public, of course, can comment on any of the specific agenda items. So I'll just keep monitoring that. But there's no comments right now for the general comment period.
No, I meant for the virtual. I have to. First, I got to do we got Matt on there, and then we'll do the pledge.
Yeah.
And then I have my virtual meeting statement.
Yeah, sometimes people can send in comments ahead of time. There are none.
Okay.
Okay. Matt, can you hear us?
Is there a way to send him a message or an email?
He did in the chat box. He said he's going to log off and try again, but I can.
Chat box. What's needed to read the chat box?
You should be able to just. Do you see it below there? Can you click it on?
I'll log on. No, I can read it once I put my glasses on.
Oh, yes.
Matt may just need to unmute himself.
No, he says I'll log off and then try to log on again.
Which he already did, but he hasn't.
Oh.
There's no
Oh, I
audio.
see that was a previous note. Uh-huh. Yeah. The joy of Hollywood Squares. Alex probably doesn't even know about Hollywood Square.
We probably don't know about some of the stuff that's on TV now.
Much of it. My youngest daughter is 33, Alex, so I'm somewhat in touch with that. She's a doctor in Los Angeles. And it's kind of crazy these days being a first responder doctor. Yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah, she's at CHLA, Children's Hospital, Los Angeles. She said it's pretty wild. They don't get a lot of COVID, but it's still a lot of stuff goes on. They're a very big
Hey,
pediatric
Travis,
hospital. Yeah.
I believe that since you have 6 commissioners, you just need 3 for a quorum.
Oh, okay, we don't need 4? This was the useful information.
So we're missing Matt and Sandy, is that it?
Right.
Okay.
And I know Sandy is not coming tonight.
Oh, so if we only have 5 commissioners, 3 would certainly be a quorum.
Yep.
I didn't know
Yeah.
about 6, whether 3 is a quorum, but looks like
Okay.
we can
I
start.
guess we can move on to the next agenda item or the next sequence here is the Pledge of Allegiance. Can we put the flag up, please? Or do
Can
we
you
just say it?
see that? I'm trying to share.
I'll go get my Vietnam veterans hat.
There we go.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
I pledge
Very,
allegiance
very clear.
to the flag of
Of
the United States of America
And to the republic for which it
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under
indivisible,
God,
Indivisible.
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and
justice
justice.
for all.
For all.
David, are you the person also with me that doesn't say under God?
And
Okay.
as a Vietnam vet, I do this instead of the heart.
So I'm not. I have a whole section here on participating in virtual meetings, and I'm not sure how much of this I'm supposed to read, Travis.
I think you could just do the highlights because all this information is actually in the agenda packet. So just noting that it's it's a virtual meeting. So if something shuts down, we can't do decisions or votes or anything like that.
Right. Uh-huh.
I think just summarize the key points would be good.
Okay. Let's see. I'm a little lost here because there's so much on here. I don't know what to say, Travis.
Public comments are
Sorry.
welcome and terribly important, and we encourage full public participation. Thank you very much. How about that, Fred?
Well, that sounds good to me. I'll need to do better next time on this.
We'll arrange a little training over a glass of something good.
The other key point is it discusses like Zoom bombing. So should that happen, or like last time if we lost power, we will try to restart the meeting. There will be no decisions or pertinent discussions while the meeting is being reset. And should that happen again, we will just, as a sustainability coordinator or Wendy, will call the meeting and we'll have to postpone it.
What is Zoom bombing?
It's when someone takes over and does very unpleasant things with images and voices. Ours is pretty secure. I've seen it before. It's gotten the security's gotten a lot better, so they don't do it anymore. But it's basically hacking with very unpleasant images and so forth.
Does it come from St. Petersburg?
Many places.
Maybe.
Wuhan, David.
Okay, so for any members of the public who are listening, there's a if you're watching on Zoom, there's a little raise hand feature, and so when we get to public comment, please click on the raise hand feature, and staff will call on you. So
Through the
now,
chair, excuse me,
Yeah.
Travis, I think there is someone raising their hand in the attendees, and it may be Matt on his phone.
Oh,
If you'd
Okay.
like, I can promote him, and then we could allow him to talk and see if it's Matt. How about that?
Yes, that sounds good.
Matt, you can speak if that's you.
The phone's muted.
Hi, this isn't Matt. This is Laura Harvey, but I had a
Okay, that wasn't Matt. Never mind. We'll get to public comment in a moment. Sorry about that.
Sounded like the mayor's wife.
okay,
But we will
getting-
have public comment,
we're
general
getting-
public comment shortly.
We're
Sorry.
getting kind of bogged down here. Let me kind of plow through here. I do see that we have in our attendees here, we do have Tom Conlon and Jerry Bernhout are attending. So they will probably we'll want to keep an eye and see if they're raising their hand as we get to public comment. But for now, can we get approval of the agenda? Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I second it.
Okay. Is
In-
any commissioner discussion? Okay, roll call vote on approval of the agenda.
Commissioner Albach,
Yes.
Commissioner Blattner,
Yes.
Commissioner Metzler. We'll put we won't count that right now, and Commissioner Morrell.
Aye.
Okay, for now, it's 3 yays and 1 communication issue.
Okay, so now let me scroll through the agenda here so I can open the regular public comment. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda. It's recommended that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Under state law, unless otherwise permitted under the Ralph M. Brown Act, the merits of the matters presented under this item cannot be discussed or acted upon by the Community Services and Environment Commission at this time. For items appearing on the agenda, the public will be invited to make comments at the time the item comes up for CSEC consideration. Upon being acknowledged by the chair, please step to the virtual podium and speak to the microphone. Begin by stating and spelling your name. Do we have any live public comments now during public comment period? Give them just a little bit if they want to raise their hand. Sometimes there's a little time lag. Okay, I guess I'm
Travis,
not.
it looks like there's 2 people that would like to speak. They have their hand up.
Okay.
I don't see that on my screen. That's
Me
interesting.
either.
Travis, if you click on the attendee,
Yes, I see it under participants. Tom Conlon has a hand up and somebody on a phone,
Laura Harvey.
which is Laura Harvey, I think. And
Okay.
Laura appears to be muted from my screen.
so
how
if
do we
you,
how do you call on someone, Fred?
yeah, just a moment. Travis, if you click next to their name, you can see, you can unmute them and allow them to talk. If you hover.
Hi, my name is Laura Harvey, and I just wanted to comment that in the document that describes how to join the meeting, the code is wrong under how to join via smartphone. So the code should be the same as it is in the Zoom video conferencing section that comes right before it. And I just wanted to say that in case that helps Matt join the meeting.
Thank you.
You want to click on Tom, Travis? Or Tom, go ahead.
Tom should be good to go.
It says talk, there it is. It was a lag.
Now he's muted though.
I think
Oh no, he.
I'm on now.
Oh yes, you are.
Thank you. Commissioners, Tom Conlon here. It's been a while since I've been able to attend. I regret missing your last meeting. I just wanted to welcome you into this is the end of the year here, and to say that today the California Energy Commission approved 4 new cities to adopt all electric reach codes. Those cities were Palo Alto, East Palo Alto, San Mateo, and Los Altos Hills. And as you know, in Sonoma County, Windsor and Santa Rosa have already passed these early in the process, earlier this year. And I just wanted to say, I hope this is something that the city of Sonoma will be considering as we move forward with this exciting new collaboration between the city council and this body. So thank you for your consideration of my comments tonight.
Thanks, Tom. Any more public comments? I don't see any in our attendees. And I don't hear anyone calling in. So we'll close the general public comments. And now we'll move to approval of the consent calendar. Can I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I would move to approve the minutes of the October 14th, 2020 CSEC regular meeting.
I second the motion.
Any commissioner discussion? Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Albach,
Yes.
Commissioner Blattner,
Yes.
Commissioner Metzler, Commissioner Morrell.
Aye.
All right. 3 to, I'm not sure how to count Commissioner Metzler at this point.
3.5 in favor.
Oh, there he is again. Twice.
Okay,
There he is.
Finally.
Oh, look at
Sorry.
that.
I shouldn't have said that.
Hey, Matt, success.
I know that beard.
I'm on my my webcam on my computer just is not working. I don't know. My son. Anyway, I don't know what's going on. So now I
Need a-
part my wife.
Need a kid.
okay, so now that we've done that, we'll move to the regular calendar. And I see in the packet here, I don't have a agenda item attached to this, but this is the charter for the Climate Action Joint Council CSEC Subcommittee.
Correct. There is an attachment, and that just has the charter and the scoping.
Okay,
That just talks about what the actual charges, and that was passed as part of the that was on November 2nd when they passed the climate emergency resolution. The city council also passed the charter, and at the time they did select 2 council members to serve on that. The expectation at this point is the first meeting would be in February. And what I'll say at this point is the meeting schedule is not really set, but there is a minimum of 4 meetings per year. They will be on second Wednesdays of select months because I will be the staff person for that committee as well. And they will be looking for 2 members from the CSEC. So that's the task at this point, to consider the selection of 2 CSEC commission members to serve on that particular committee.
now I spoke with you before, Travis, and is it true that the chair appoints the 2?
That is correct.
Okay, well, I'd like to appoint David Morrell as 1. And I would also like to wait until we have new commissioners to appoint the next one. Because I don't believe that we have anyone here who would like to do that. And if some of the new commissioners that are applying get on, I know that they would really like to do that. So I think we can afford to wait for that. And David Morrell is going to represent us well if we only have him and not two. So would that be acceptable to wait until that's January 20th when the new commissioners will be chosen by the council?
Mhm.
Is that okay, Travis?
I believe it is that is acceptable. Yes,
Okay.
as
I
long as
accept the appointment with pleasure and will do my best to represent the CSEC on this joint subcommittee with the city council.
Very good. So then we have for our Climate Action Joint Council CSEC Subcommittee, we have David Morrell. So we're ready to go whenever they start going. And we'll put the next person in when we have new commissioners.
My understanding is that the council still has to make a little bit of its change because the two members appointed were Mayor Logan Harvey and Council Member Rachel Hundley, who's moving into other duties. So Rachel's appointment will need to be replaced by someone else from the council to have a full 4 members of this committee.
Okay.
I
That's
look
correct,
forward
yep.
to coordinating with Mayor Harvey in the interim while we each wait for our colleague to join us.
That sounds good.
That's correct.
Okay, so let me see. We'll have public comment on this item.
We certainly can. There's not gonna, it's a selection process. I don't know if we have to do a motion or we can table it later on when you have 2 members. There's multiple options.
Well, I'd like to officially have David be on there from tonight's meeting.
Okay, then I think you could have, you can open it up for public comment and then have the motion. And should it be seconded, then you can have commissioner discussion and then vote on it.
Okay. So public comment, I see Tom with his hand up, but he's muted.
There he goes.
Go
Thank
ahead,
you.
Tom.
Thank you. Couple of points. One, I would just draw everybody's attention to the fact that this joint subcommittee was proposed originally in the context of a climate emergency, and that it's been quite some time, it's taken quite some time for this body to form itself to take any action. And it scares me to think that if this is the speed at which we address emergencies in the city, we are in for a lot of trouble. So I would, and I appreciate there's been a lot of changing personnel, but I would hope that the nomination of Commissioner Morrell, who I don't see any reason why he shouldn't serve in representation of the CSEC on this joint body, I just would hope that it wouldn't be perceived to be a lack of interest or action on the part of this body in only nominating one nominee. And I don't see any reason why a temporary nominee could be appointed tonight or approved tonight and have that person step down upon replacement by a new member who might be assigned to the CSEC in the future. So I just want to speak in favor of the urgency of getting this body moving forward, and in favor, and also finally, my recollection of the original meeting where the city council components of the subcommittee were formed, that it was David Cook who endorsed Madeline Agramonte to be on that subcommittee, and Rachel Hundley being the second member. And so that unless I missed something at the city council between now and then, I would just bring that, my recollection, to your discretion tonight. So those are my comments under this item. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
So a clarification for Tom Conlon's comment. there was originally Councilmember Agamonte and Hunley were selected as the ad hoc subcommittee charged with scoping and developing the charter for the standing joint CSCC City Council Committee. So they completed their work, they stepped down, and then Mayor Harvey and Vice Mayor Hunley became the two members of the standing committee.
That was my understanding, that it was Rachel as the second, along with Logan, on the committee. And with respect to Tom Conlon's commentary about an emergency, as he might imagine, I fully agree with that. And I would propose to move forward on behalf of my role representing the CSEC in terms of trying to move this forward with a little more speed as it deserves.
It doesn't seem to me that it would, I don't know, Tom, that it would necessarily give the impression that we were not moving forward fast on our commission if we only had one appointee while we were waiting a month for new people. And I apologize that I can't do it, but I can't do it while I'm president of La Luz. It's just too much time.
Any more commissioner discussion? I personally feel like that David Morrell can carry this torch totally adequately for a month and a half time to keep heat on whatever there is to keep heat on from our part, from this commission.
Well, the protocol would be to do the motion second and then have a discussion of that.
Okay. Okay. Let's see, I'm clicking between all these different screens. So could I have a motion to approve David Morrell as the CSCC representative for the, let's see, let me go back here to the Climate Action Joint Council CSCC Subcommittee, the CAJC. And
I move that David Morrell is the representative of the CSCC to the Joint Climate Action Committee.
and that we'll wait for the new commissioner to appoint the second person.
Exactly.
Okay, do I have a second?
I second.
Roll call vote, please.
Well, no, we have to have discussion first.
Now we have discussion, counselor
right.
discussion on the merits of it. Yeah.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yeah, excuse me for, because I know I'm late. We have a quorum, but is the only person we're missing Sandy?
That's
Yeah.
correct.
And I would be interested, except that I'm already on the task force, the bike pedestrian trail expansion task force, and I'm afraid of committing to too, overcommitting myself on the commission. And Fred, you're not able to do it?
I'm overcommitted as well.
I do agree with Tom, though, that I think that I'm just not sure how that the optics of us not being able to field a full committee is that might send the wrong message. personally, I don't see there's any optic issue there. I think David is the man, and I think we're going to be fine with David for a month and a half. Okay.
And I think that Sandy's pretty overwhelmed, so I don't know if she'd be able to do it.
Of course, I'm not overwhelmed, so I'll do it. But it's right in my wheelhouse with my other responsibilities.
Okay, any more commissioner discussion?
Yeah, I had one other question. What is it? How many new members do we think we might be getting on January 20th, or whenever in January when they approve? How many new commissioners can we add?
2 regular and 1 alternate.
Yeah. So that's in addition to Sandy. Yeah. So we should have plenty of people to choose from we should have a full commission then, hopefully, if we get enough applicants.
Alex, do you have any comments?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay.
I would add that one of the things I will urge this joint council CSEC committee to do is to reach out to the activist groups at the Sonoma Valley High School. As part, having seen in the discussion last year of the climate emergency resolution, how important that was, and intrinsically how valuable that will be to making something happen with this so-called climate emergency. So that's one of my agenda items, is to push my colleagues to have an active involvement of the high school climate action people,
Yep.
including Alex possibly.
More commissioner discussion? Now, can we have a roll call vote on our motion, please?
Commissioner Alabak,
Yes.
Commissioner Blattner,
Yes.
Commissioner Metzler,
Aye.
Commissioner Morrell.
Aye.
The motion passes 4 yeas, no nays.
Okay. Now to our next agenda item, the update from CSEC's ad hoc Sonoma Trails Task Force to support creation of a nonprofit for dedicated bike pedestrian trail expansion. Matt? Or do we have staff report first?
We do not have a staff report. I included the memo that Commissioner Metzler sent, and I will turn it over to him for his update.
I have, before I read the report, I have something else I want to say, which is that our October 14th, 2020 commission meeting, I took the lead on a task force looking into the creation of this possible nonprofit. I've done some research and enlisted a couple of volunteers who are interested in working with me on this. Before proceeding further, I would like to bring to the attention of the commission and staff some of the possible ramifications of establishing such a nonprofit. I think we all should be aware of the potential precedent that might be established by the creation of such an entity. That is the idea that the city of Sonoma would be transferring to the private nonprofit sector obligation for something that could be considered the city's responsibility. Some might think that this would have the effect of privatizing what could be considered an important public function. If Sonoma needed to spend more money on roads, police, fire, or other services, or activities, they would not establish a nonprofit to fund them. It's wonderful that the city has hired a sustainability coordinator. However, if a nonprofit for bike, pedestrian trail expansion is created, what is to prevent the establishment of nonprofits to meet the city's other sustainability goals? I don't think we want to have multiple nonprofits to fund EV charging stations, energy efficiency, retrofitting, zero waste, or each of the city's other equally important sustainability goals. Whether intentionally or not, by creating a nonprofit for bike pedestrian trail expansion, we are signaling that the bike pedestrian facilities are a lower priority and less deserving of public funds than roads, parking, police, or other public services and infrastructure. I'm not sure that this is the message we want to send. Sonoma has declared a climate emergency, and I think that we should think very carefully about offloading the crucial greenhouse gas reduction strategy of increasing bike and pedestrian transportation facilities to a nonprofit organization. I'm quite willing to proceed with the work of this task force in preparation to making a report to the commission for the city council consideration. And I'm not saying I'm unwilling at this point to work toward the creation of a nonprofit for this important purpose. I just want the commission to consider this issue before I proceed. So I don't know if we can have discussion on this, or if I should go ahead and read the, well, you guys have all read the report in the agenda. Or in the packet.
Yeah. Does anyone have any technical clarifications on Matt's report at this time from commissioners? Okay, well, seeing none, then we can move to public comment. And I don't see any hands raised. Maybe some hands will be raised in a minute or less here. This is for public comment, so we'll get to commissioner comments. I'm not seeing any public comment coming up here. Yes, Tom is up. Go ahead, Tom.
I'm sorry, I'll be brief. Tom Conlon again. I remain, as a member of the public, a little confused as to the objectives that this nonprofit would be trying to satisfy and achieve. This is being a city body. I'm imagining that the scope would be primarily directed toward bike lanes within the city. And so the question that arises in my mind is, where does the city have bike corridor needs which are not already where there's not a roadway already there? Would the purpose of this body be to raise funds to pay for perhaps eminent domain expenses in condemning land adjacent to the city's existing rights of way? Or would it be for some other purpose? And if it's for outside the city limits, I think that begs the question of whether the city should be the proper institution to be doing that sort of outside the city activity. So those are my comments at this time. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Give a minute here, see if any hands come up or any phone calls come in. Okay, not seeing any.
There are no email comments either as
Okay,
well,
thanks,
which I'm
Trevor.
checking. Yep.
Okay, well, we'll close public comment then, and so there's no motion or action requested here. So as far as what we do now, do we have just commissioner discussion?
Well,
David?
I'm wondering if I should read my report just for the record also.
What do you think, Travis? Does he need to read it for the record, or is it in the record?
It's in the record because it's in the agenda packet, which has been published. Yeah.
David?
Yes, I found Commissioner Metzger's commentary about a nonprofit intriguing. I certainly don't know the details on the bike support process, but I would note for the record that a number of local nonprofits play very important and supportive roles, not only in Sonoma Valley, but specifically in supporting Sonoma City. For example, the Sonoma Ecology Center operates the Sonoma Garden Park on 7th Street East as a park on behalf of the city of Sonoma. So it's important to recognize that nonprofits have been chartered essentially to play some significant roles. There's a nonprofit group of the Sonoma Overlook Trail that does some extremely important work on that trail. At the Ecology Center, there's important work going on the Montini Preserve. So there's a lot that nonprofits already are doing. And if it were appropriate for some reason that beyond my professional knowledge on the bicycle side, I certainly wouldn't rule it out conceptually.
So David, you're basically saying if the structure is set up appropriately, a lot can still be done by a nonprofit and if they are within the structure of the city.
Can be and is being done in a number of examples that are real world examples. So if there was something different about bicycle lanes that are beyond anything I know professionally, that's fine. But conceptually, nonprofit support of the city of Sonoma and the Sonoma Valley in the county arena is extremely important and needs to be recognized as such.
I have a question, and Dave, perhaps David or anybody else would know. are both the garden park and all of the property of the Overlook Trail and Montini Trail within the city limits?
The garden park is complicated. I don't know about Montini and the SOT. Garden Park is in the county, but it is city owned. So in that sense, we would have to get legal advice as to whether that means it's in the city limits. My non-legal guess would be it's outside the city limits, but owned by the city of Sonoma. But that's my PhD does not include law school, so I duck that detail.
The reason I'm asking is because, the need is, a lot of the need for bike connectivity and pedestrian connectivity is outside the city limits.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure that a nonprofit that works strictly within the city limits would be viable, because bike paths to nowhere that end at the city limits would be I don't think that would be very effective. And so for a nonprofit like this to be really effective, I think it would have to be the entire valley working towards improving bike access, especially connectivity with the springs.
I could imagine it could be set up that way, Matt. I mean, the Sonoma Ecology Center, where, as you know, I'm chair of the board, operates within Sonoma Valley as a whole, but also operates more broadly throughout California and elsewhere as necessary to demonstrate projects. And there's no rule against a chartered 501c3 in California operating only within the city of Sonoma. Mm-hmm. It operates where it needs to operate legally.
Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, you guys saw my comments in the my report about how the problem with nonprofit work on bike and pedestrian trail expansion is difficult to find charitable dollars for the topic. There's the state grant funding from construction projects, but it's difficult to access without advanced engineering and design work being conducted. It's difficult to get designed. In other words, I don't think a nonprofit could fund the administrative aspects, the advanced engineering and design work, and so forth. The nonprofit might. There is a track record of other places where the nonprofit is primarily for the purpose of acquiring property and right of way, which is what the Sonoma Land Trust, the Rails to Trails Conservancy. Other things in my research that I found out from other people, I look at other examples such as the Napa Valley Vine Trail, but the Napa Valley Vine Trail has got a lot of support from the tourism industry in Napa County, and some of the wineries have put a lot of money into that Napa Valley Vine Trail. Mm-hmm. And also the Napa Valley Vine Trail and some other like Rails to Trails Conservancy projects are really for recreational bicycling and tourism. They're not so much for transportation for local, residents to use for non-motorized, bicycle or pedestrian transportation. So those are just some of the constraints that I have found in researching this topic.
Matt, do you have an idea of what kind of budget you're talking about? Because if you're talking about a significant budget that you have to raise funds for, I guarantee you for a nonprofit, that's a huge amount of the time that you're talking about is raising money.
Yeah, I know. That's the other, I just don't see that I personally have the time to commit to starting a new nonprofit. And I have volunteers who are interested, but if without them being hired by the city, I think or some funding to pay them, to give them, I just don't see how it could all be done. Starting a nonprofit like this can be done, all by volunteers. In my experience, also talking with Eris, with the Eris Weaver with the Bicycle Coalition, there's a couple places where people in neighborhoods have banded together to establish a greenway or a bike path. But those are a group of neighbors in a specific area of Santa Rosa who say, we want this Southeast Santa Rosa Greenway, and it's the people who live in that neighborhood who have pushed it and made it happen. When it's a grassroots from the people in the community that are making it happen, or when it's a business or industry group such as the wineries or tourism industry, that can make it happen. Also in places where it happens, where there's an existing unused railroad right of way, that's frequently what's in use, but we don't have any of those situations here in Sonoma.
Do you have any comments, Alex?
I do, but not exactly pertaining to that subject. But we discussed in the October 14th meeting, me looking for some youth who would also be interested in giving comments about maybe the placement or just comments overall about the idea of having a new bike/pedestrian and what their role would be in the task force. And I came up with a list of several people, and I didn't know what you were exactly looking for and how many and where they live and what school they go to and age range. So I have a long list of people that I think would be interested. I talked to a couple of them and they are. So I just wanted to say I've been working on it, and when we come to the stages where we need to have more meetings about this, I am ready to get some people to come as well to give some community input.
All right. I've got a couple of thoughts. I find myself in general agreement with Matt that, or what I feel like is Matt's conclusion, that it just doesn't seem that efficacious to start a new nonprofit to work on bike trails in the city. Now I noticed the city just did a repaving job, and all the new pavement is like a washboard. When I come on Napa Street East into town, as soon as I get to about 6th Street East and it's the new pavement, it's unbelievably rough. I mean, it's worse than it was before, but it's got new paint on it. The new paint was great, but in about a month, it was completely faded and it wasn't green. But there was at least a little bit of space on the side of a line that you could say, okay, this is my space. Whereas if you go out into the county, there's no paint on the road at all. And so, you have a whole residential area in the Buena Vista neighborhood, Castle Road, Napa Street East, who want to come into town, who can come into town on Napa Street East. And I was just really disappointed in the new paving job. I don't know if you noticed that, Matt, that the washboard quality to the new paving job. So that was disappointing. And then the paint fades. So if you spend a lot of money, I think you need to get a better quality paint that's going to last on there better. Like if you go to Cotati, around where they have the intersection by the interstate there, by where the music store is, there's a lot of really bright green paint there, and it's I think that's what's needed, is the green paint in town, and then have the street sweeper sweep all the gravel off the side of the road, so you're not pushed out into the traffic because there's so much gravel and stuff on the side. So I have a feeling that as I look at the that the city council had a work plan, identified and prioritized some actions to enhance environmental sustainability, wanted to support the creation of a local nonprofit. That seems to me to be sort of a handoff of government's own responsibility to do it. That's a public works job, is to clean the streets and paint them right. So I don't know. I don't think that it doesn't seem like it seems like what do you say, a problem in search, a solution in search of a problem, something like that. That because but I also recall in the Broadway repaving project that there was a number of different types of bikers who were identified, and one was people who go out there and aren't scared of all different kind of traffic, and then there's sort of a tier down of people who won't go out in the big traffic, and they need bike lanes, or they'll go on the bike path, and then there's just people who plain won't do it at all unless there's a dedicated bike lane. And so Sonoma has got what, Fifth Street West got a bike lane, and you have the bike path. So I agree with Matt that you know, it needs to be valley wide, and the county has got this whole bike path thing already going. It's going to go down 8th Street East. And finally, for me, being a working class guy, I use my truck to go to work. And I ride my bike for exercise, but not to go buy anything, because if I go buy anything, I can't buy anything in Sonoma because it's too expensive. We shop in Napa or in the 101 corridor. So I think those are some of the elements that I'm thinking of. But I think that you know, people could be encouraged to ride their bike, but a little green paint and street sweeping and striping would go a long way, and the public works could do that, maybe just with their own equipment. I don't know.
Matt,
Yeah,
refresh my memory. Have we ever discussed having this, rather than being an organization of a new nonprofit, having been just another subcommittee of the CSCC?
We'd have to get that into the work plan.
I'm beginning to also agree that I think that it needs to be within the construct of the city organization rather than a nonprofit.
Yeah, I have a couple of other things to say. I did talk to Adrian Palanchar with Project Bicycle, and you know, the way he got Project Bicycle off the ground was he, rather than starting a new nonprofit, he partnered with the existing nonprofit, which is Teen Services. And so that was some of my research, and you know, in reaching out to the Bicycle Coalition, the Land Trust, the Ecology Center, I could not find another organization that said, yes, I would like to, you know, that they would like to partner with the city of Sonoma in this nonprofit. In terms of, and I think that a lot of what, you know, what Fred said in the other comments, what's really needed in Sonoma, I think, is improvement of the existing infrastructure, bicycle infrastructure, such as cleaning shoulders. There's a lot of places in town, Napa Road, there's a bike lane towards Napa, but it's not usable for much of the way because it's overgrown with brush and shrubbery and trees that haven't been trimmed for 10 years. And you have to ride out in the traffic lane, you know, unless you're only 2 foot, unless you're like a little kid who can go underneath these 3 foot tall shrubs. And, you know, so green paint and cleaning the shoulders. You know, one of the biggest things that I see is needed in town is the existing bike path for a few blocks downtown needs to be widened, because it is not really a bike path, because there are so many pedestrians, you cannot really bicycle. You have to, there needs to be like a 4-block section where there's 2 paths, one for pedestrians and one for bicycles. Because right now you can't, you're better off going on Spain Street because you have to go so slow because there's so many pedestrians. So improving those kind of things, I think, are a higher priority than starting a new nonprofit.
sounds like we've got some good feedback there. Good ideas come out here. And this is a, let's see, no action requested.
No, it's just
Status.
just a status report, and
Okay.
part of the task force was to report to the commission at each meeting, and then there's dates set for a draft or a final report to the city council.
Alex?
Can I ask a brief question about the bike path? It doesn't have street lights on it at night, correct?
No,
I think an interesting thing to think about, I don't know the efficacy or the cost of it, but there are certain bike paths paint, if we're going to be repainting them anyway, that glow in the dark. So they can be utilized at night, and so you're not like going off the path at night if you wanted to increase the safety of them. That's just a thought I was having while you guys were discussing.
this is like what Fred was saying, improving the pavement and the existing bike paths, I think, is kind of a higher priority. Another thing that I think needs to happen is between Highway 12 and 5th Street West, the bike path crosses 3 streets that have very little traffic. And when I ride that section of the bike path, there's more bicyclists and pedestrians than there on the going east and west on the bike path than there are cars going on those streets north and south that cross the bike path. Well, why does the bike path have stop signs? The bike path should have a right of way, and there should be stop signs because there's way more pedestrians than bicyclists. It should also be a raised platform so the bicyclists, the bicyclists should have the priority rather than the cars, especially someplace like that that has very little car traffic. So anyway, resolving those issues, I think, is a higher priority than starting a new nonprofit. And lighting, because nobody rides it at night because they can't really use it for transportation because it's too dark.
Exactly.
Sounds like some good feedback for you there, Travis.
Actually, right now that feedback, okay, yeah.
So let's see if we don't have any action here, then I guess we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is summary of outcomes of recommendations to City Council to increase access to public electric vehicle charging stations in Sonoma. Trev?
Yes, so we had this discussion a few months ago at the commission, and we put forth staff recommendations, and then we combined them with the CSCC recommendations. So there was actually 4 primary options. And so I gave a presentation to the city council, and they came back, and there's a prioritized list or a hierarchical list of what approaches to take. And so as you can see in the agenda package, a couple things is they requested a numeric goal of EV charging stations, which I believe is 12 in the next 3 years. And they had a couple of other suggestions. One of them is to increase the number of charge ports in the existing public parking area on West Napa Street. Unfortunately, one of the chargers just broke again. They're pretty old. They're about 10 or 11 years old. And unfortunately, what we have discovered is it's going to be a considerable cost to upgrade that parking lot to meet current ADA compliance, because there is no public access from the parking lot to the sidewalk. So I'm not sure what's going to happen with that particular area, but it's going to have to be upgraded to meet ADA compliance anyways. But until that's done, there will be no additional charging ports there. And I'm not sure if the current one to be fixed, I don't know if that's going to happen right now. So I know that's being looked at right now. The city council also endorsed installation of 2 stations with 4 charging points at the Depot Park Museum, and also to look at the taxi waiting spots on the plaza. because they're not being sufficiently used. And the question is, can you put chargers there? So that's something that staff is looking into right now. Let's see what else. And the other thing is they expressed interest in the grant program. So city property is limited with regards to actual area, but also accessibility, readily accessible electricity. So that's where the grant program came up, and they were interested in that, is to look at funding nonprofit or private organizations to potentially site EV charging on their property, provided it's publicly accessible. But details have to be worked out on that, and funding and so forth. So that's staff is going to start looking at that before that is even ripe for city council review. So that's kind of an update, but it's good that there's a hierarchical list, a numeric goal. And I have talked to the commission before about some of the challenges that we have faced regarding energy accessibility and so forth. There is a current grant program that just started that we're looking at, and then also there will be the rebate program through Sonoma Clean Power in August again that will help offset some of those funds. And ideally, those funds could be used by private and nonprofits also in conjunction with a potential city grant that would make it economically feasible. So that's it for staff report. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
We'll have technical clarifications here first, and then public comment, and then we'll come back for discussion. So does anyone have any clarifications as to the technical aspects of this? Okay, we'll see none. We'll move to public comment, and I know that Tom was not here talk about this the last meeting, so maybe I'll see that blue hand come up here for Tom Conlon. Give him a second. Okay, giving you some chance here, Tom.
It says no comment from Tom in the chat, sir.
Okay, very good. I'm looking at the participants.
I was looking in the chat where it says Tom Conlon, no comment.
Two heads are better than one. Okay, not seeing any any other public comment. Any phone? No, seeing no phone, we will close public comment, and we don't have a motion. This is informational, so now we'll have any commissioner discussion, comments. David?
I was a little puzzled by Travis's presentation about West Napa Street. Do you mean the one kind of near Reader's Books, which is more off of East Napa Street?
My apology.
Okay, because West Napa Street could be the Bank of America site, and I was hoping it's not broken already because it's so new. Second comment, we in this case being the Sonoma Ecology Center are in the process of a master plan approval process at Sonoma Garden Park. It would be intriguing to look at an EV installation there, where I believe there should be plenty of electricity as part of the rebuild of the new property around the big oak tree on 7th Street East. And that could be another place where we could look at funding for an EV charger. And one last comment, to the degree that there are grants from Sonoma Clean Power, they really can work very efficiently. At the Sonoma Ecology Center, we recently got a $12,500 cash grant from Sonoma Clean Power to acquire a hybrid electric vehicle for staff use. And we're able to get one. And we got a used one at about 19, so it cost us only about $7 grand to have a whole workable, fairly new, like a 2-year-old hybrid EV, really a great car for $7 grand in cash outlay. So things can really make a difference by working with them. and they're pretty easy to work with. There was paperwork, but it wasn't like working with the state of California.
Yes, the park is definitely on my target list because that would be an ideal
Mm-hmm.
location as well. So, yep.
And there's plenty of room there as we reconfigure the parking lot into the master plan.
Yes, and just a note, when that is done, there's strict requirements for van accessibility and ADA compliance. So,
Right.
as we have discovered on East Napa Street.
Yes.
So yes, absolutely.
Any other commissioner comments?
I just am wondering, the council has identified various, I'm not muted here. Okay. The council has identified various goals, but do they have the funding to meet these goals? That's my question. They can have the goals they want. If there's no money to meet these goals, then what's, kind of like, what's the point?
Well, the point is to come up with ideas and hard specific numbers so that they could be considered for budgeting. And that's where the grant program would come in, is what they've asked for input from staff is how much should it be? What should be the criteria? And then the expectation would be they would discuss and then fund it, should they so choose to. But all these projects will require funding, but they're looking for more specifics. And so we'll be coming up with a budget, for example, at Depot Park, and then look at obviously grants and the rebate program, and then see what would be needed from the city should they decide to move ahead with that.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, the Depot Park, okay, that's not the Casa Grande lot, it's Depot Park. So is that owned by the city?
Yes, so the city owns, I believe it's 15 spaces that if you park there, you're looking right at the railroad cars. The rest of that is actually owned by the county, but the location that we've looked at would be right there in the city portion. There would be two of the small, if you go to the ones at East Napa Street, they're actually, the newer ones are slightly smaller than that, but there would be two of those sort of what called bollard style with 4 charger ports. So 4 cars could charge at the same time.
I have a question for you, Travis. The number 6, the workplace charges for city employees on council direction, is that at the bottom of the list? Because as I recall, I think Logan made the point that people these days are buying EVs so that they don't have to charge them somewhere, so they don't get stuck. So that, if you're going to use one to commute, you're getting one where you can do the whole commute with your EV and then charge it at home. So is that number 6 there because it's at the bottom of the list and it's the least important?
That is correct. And the discussion was that the vision would be that there would be the potential for workplace chargers installed at the Corp Yard simultaneously with the greening or the electrification of vehicles out there. So whether it's utility vehicles on road and off road would be that's what the city council was expressing as a long-term plan. And then it would make sense to have workplace chargers there as well. But it is the least preferred of the options that were provided. And I will say that the mayor was, I think, was pretty clear in that greater emphasis should be on installing EV chargers at multi-family dwellings like apartment buildings and so forth. And I will say that there are, Cal Green building codes that require EV charging ready at establishments and as well, I should say, commercial establishments as well as multi-family dwelling construction as well, but it doesn't cover existing. It's just new. So that's where our focus is here, is to try to build up for new facilities as well. existing facilities.
I just had one comment, which is about the depot, or excuse me, about the Sonoma Garden Park. Charging stations should be open to the public, and the garden park is closed to the public. Is only open during certain hours. It's not available to the public for neighbors to charge their cars there. It's really would only be for people who are using the garden park.
Yeah, and a comment is the Sonoma Clean Power has defined publicly accessible for probably what we call the level 2 charger would be for visitors and workers during normal hours. So it wouldn't be 3 o'clock in the morning. You can't drive down there and plug it in. Only the DC fast chargers, if they're paying for or supporting them, those have to be available basically 24 hours 7. Because those are so-called destination chargers versus the convenience chargers.
Well, it sounds like the city has a plan here. We had our say up front, and we're just being filled in on where things stand now, pretty much. So there's no action required. Is there any final comments here? Okay, we will then move on to the next agenda item of status of Sonoma's implementation of the requirements under California's SB 1383 short-lived climate pollutants. Travis?
Yes, let me get my presentation set up here. Let's see. Take me a second to share my screen.
Wow.
All right, everyone can see it, hopefully. So this was a request of Commissioner Morrell to give a update of basically the city's compliance status and where we're at with SB 1383. So basically the problem is, and I know some of you have varying degrees of knowledge about this, so I'm going to just kind of do a real brief introduction and then kind of get into the nitty gritty. So landfilled organics generate methane. So in anaerobic conditions, organics generate methane. Methane is about it has about 25 global warming potential, which means one molecule of methane is about the equivalent of 25 molecules of CO2, which is the benchmark. So it is much more powerful, but it is in much lower quantity. So the pie chart just gives the base. This is looking at the characterization of the waste that's disposed of. So this doesn't include the materials that are segregated for recycling or the so-called green waste. This is what we actually throw away. So organics is about 67% of the waste stream. So in calculating it for Sonoma, this is the residential rate is each person disposes about 1,200 pounds per person per year. So that means that each person is disposing of about 804 pounds of organics per person per year. So it is a significant problem. So SB 1383 is a relatively new law. It was signed a few years ago, but it's just starting the regulations were just finalized in November. And the two primary focus is that it's a climate action law, and it also seeks to support food security. So by 2025, the SB 1383 calls for a 75% reduction in the amount of organics that are disposed of. And also a 20% increase in the amount of commercial edible food recovered from the garbage, because we know that this is a significant source. And this is the food security issue, is to try to stop throwing away commercially edible food, especially when we have a well-recognized food insecurity problem. So there's requirements for the city, requirements for the county, and this would be the multi-jurisdictional zero waste Sonoma, all generators, residents and commercial and institutions, haulers, self-haulers, commercial food generators, and food recovery programs. And I'm just going to focus really on the requirements for the city. So like I said, there's a 75% reduction, but this is a statewide target. The city does not have a target. Instead, the city has prescribed requirements. So it's not based on outcomes and targets, but it's actually measures that have to be implemented. The thought is that will achieve the 75% reduction. What's really important that's unprecedented is the city can be fined for non-compliance. The communication has been from the state that they're serious about this. So it's not just city operations, but it's achievements within the city itself. So the city obviously is very concerned about this, that the city can be held responsible or liable for non-compliance. And also, all the requirements have to be enforced in the city. So there has to be an enforcement mechanism for the city that I'll get into and talk to. Certainly, if anyone has any questions while I'm talking, just let me know. So it really kicks in on January 1st, 2022. So we have a little more than a year, and that's when the state enforcement begins. And so by that time, the city must have enacted in ordinances. I'm going to talk about each one of these in a second. Provide and monitor organics collection for all generators. Establish an edible food recovery program. Conduct education outreach. Have a green procurement program for recycled content of paper and other materials. And then annually procure recovered organic materials. By January 2024, the city enforcement program must begin. So there's that 2-year education outreach support, although the state enforcement will begin, and then the city will begin its enforcement program no later than 2024. So I'm going to talk about each one of those. So by 2022, the city has to enact the following ordinances. And this could all be one ordinance or different ordinances, but these are the specific ones. There has to be an implementation program of all the requirements of SB 1383. This includes a mandatory 3-container system, which we have. There has to be enforcement provisions in that, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. That is an issue that needs discussion. There has to be a self-hauling generator ordinance. So we do have a franchise hauler, Sonoma Garbage Collectors, but individuals or entities can self-haul to the landfill and so forth. So there has to be an ordinance that's going to require them to also segregate out organics through and send that off to an approved facility, basically, which is a composting facility. And they have to maintain records. So there's a lot of record keeping and reporting throughout all these requirements. Another ordinance that has to be done is that it requires compliance with the Cal Green building requirement, which basically says that you have to segregate out recyclables and other materials for construction demolition debris. The good news is we already have that. That's in Sonoma Municipal Code, and these are the citations. So we're one up on that one. The state law also requires compliance with the Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance, which basically requires a certain in landscape planning for construction, a certain amount of soil amendment with organics and mulch, and that also exists in the Sonoma Municipal Code. The city has to provide and monitor organics collection to all generators. So like I said, the city has a franchise agreement with Sonoma Garbage Collectors. Customers right now have 3 containers, so they have to be a certain color. So we're in compliance with that. There are labeling requirements that will have to be done that is not currently, does not meet the requirements for 2022. What's one of the biggest issues is in Sonoma right now, residents are prohibited from placing non-plant-based food waste in organics cart. And that's because of the system the Sonoma garbage collectors uses. And that's going to have to change. So what's going to happen is all food waste, whether it's plant-based or fish, meat, dairy products, all that has to be collected in an organics cart. And what's going to happen now is all that currently is going to be shipped to Napa because Sonoma County does not have a organics facility. The closest one for Sonoma is in Napa. This is going to increase the cost. Estimates right now is the monthly bill will increase by up to potentially 6% because some of this material is handled locally and it's going to all have to be shipped to Napa. And this slide just gives you the sense of the number of residential customers. It's about 4,051. We're using the container as a metric. And this is the number of commercial facilities right now, according to some garbage collectors, is 108, where there's restaurants, multifamily units, and businesses, which includes nonprofits as well, but that's considered a business for the purpose of this. The good news is right now, all 108 entities are at 100% compliance with mandatory commercial organics and mandatory commercial recycling, which will ultimately feed into the SB 1383. So this is really good news. So that means that education outreach is obviously important, but it's not, we don't have to go and try to find people and find people and try to get them into compliance. That's already working right now. Another important requirement is that annually, either the city or basically the hauler has to monitor the waste containers to minimize organics. So basically what it requires is some sort of monitoring system or characterization to make sure that organics are not being disposed of. Sonoma Garbage Collectors has a unique system. This is a picture of it down there, in which it empties or tips the container in the front of the cab so they can actually do real-time monitoring. So this is pretty unusual. Most of them are side loaders or top loaders. So this is really unusual. So right now, it's our understanding that they're in compliance with this particular requirement. I think for a lot of municipalities, this is going to be a significant issue, and we're ahead of that. If organics are found, the generator has to be notified and educated. And if it's 3 times basically in a row that they're violating the organics in the trash, penalties can be imposed. And the question is, who's going to do that? Is it the city or Sonoma Garbage Sonoma Garbage Collectors? And then some details have to be worked out as to how that reporting goes about. I think one of the bigger programs that is going to take a lot of work is the edible food recovery program. Certainly there's there's non-perishable programs, but it's the perishable that's important, because that's the biggest issue right now. So the city's going to have to identify and expand as necessary the food recovery program to meet that goal of the 20% reduction.
I got a comment on that, Travis.
Yes, absolutely.
When I was a young man, they didn't lock the dumpsters, and we just got tons of free food out of the dumpsters. It was great. And but then they gradually, lawyers took over and they started to lock all the dumpsters and put fences around them. And so then, you get a bag of potatoes and there was 1, 2 bad ones in there, and you get the whole rest of the bag of potatoes. Mm-hmm. And so I think that, dumpster diving was really fun, and it's too bad that they got rid of it. So maybe for, this particular edible food recovery program, they could have a waiver on the side of the dumpster. So before you dive in there, you can sign the waiver, so then you're good. But this is fun because dumpster diving, if they sell it, they throw it away. Mm-hmm. So when you go along the back of stores, you look at the dumpster of a carpet store, there's a ton of carpet. So if you want to get free stuff for recovery, mm-hmm. that's how you do it. And So I think that it's unfortunate that you know, they don't let people scavenge or gleaning. You know, they have gleaning of agricultural fields. Um, so, but that puts the burden on the vendor to do something with this food. But the hunt for free food is pretty fun,
Mhm.
and but those are days gone by.
Well, ideally, it's great that they can, recover edible food and distribute it. But ideally, the what's really hopefully is driving them is to generate less, because that's always the most effective way, is to not generate the food waste to begin with, because it's cheaper to deal with. But what's going to happen is that they're going to we're going to have to create a system in which there's the generators, and then there's the generators are matched up with the recovery organizations. And then there has to be an annual education program as well to make this system work. So there is some existing entities, but not everything is keyed into complying with the law at this point. So I'm not going to go into every detail here, but it just talks about the different programs that have to, or the different requirements. And then we have tier 1 generators, which are the large supermarkets, and so forth and so on. Restaurants don't kick in until 2024. The schools are also part of it, because they provide, as long as they're producing or serving food, they're also producing a lot of food. So one of the drivers is to stop creating the waste. And if you have the waste, how can we distribute it so it's not a waste, it's a resource? Yes, David.
This could produce some interesting challenges between city and county. I'm thinking of groups that are active now in food related. I'm thinking of Fish, Meals on Wheels, some of the Vintage House Food Service, and Teen Services is involved somewhat now in food service. And it's not so much just in the city, it's in the Springs heavily. The Springs Community Hall is very active in food service, particularly with the pandemic and the economic squeeze. So finding a way for the city and county to communicate over the Sonoma Valley urban complex, one might call it, the city of Sonoma Valley, I lovingly call it, is going to get real important here. Mm-hmm. And you're looking at only a year. Mm-hmm. I mean, January 1, 2022 sounds like a long way off, except that's just about 12 months and a few days. Mm-hmm. So the city county stuff, somebody should be talking to Goran's staff from the city right now about how we're going to take advantage of the groups that I just named that operate in Sonoma Valley as opposed to Sonoma City.
Mm-hmm. You raise an excellent point, and the city's in close contact with Zero Waste Sonoma that's trying to coordinate all this, because they don't view city boundaries as boundaries. So you're right. We can't just stop at the border. And so they're heavily involved. And so, yeah, there's a lot of coordination at that level, and we're working out some details, but absolutely, it is really important that happens.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had one thing. I work at Fish a couple times a month in the food room, and we use an incredible amount of food from that is like not already used, but Whole Foods donates an incredible amount. So does Sonoma Market and Lucky's. So it's already starting to be implemented, but if we could do it more, that'd be great.
Absolutely. And they're like long-term partners. And what's going to happen is we're going to bring in organizations that have not done this yet. So that's going to be the more difficult challenge, but it's some of the restaurants and the schools and some of these other entities. And Alex, as working at Fish, I'm sure you've heard this a lot, is they want quality food. So it's not just donuts and bakery products. So from the food security issues, so it's trying to work out getting that important food to the people that need it. So absolutely.
I got one more comment, Travis, that, perhaps there could be a number of different streams of food. You have your edible food, and then you could have maybe somebody would be motivated to go into chickens and if you feed your chickens or pigs, and then you get eggs, and so you could have somebody in Sonoma who would have a constant supply of feed, and they could have a little enterprise there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully there's going to be some innovative solutions that come out of this, because the regulatory structures there, thou shalt do this and this. And so hopefully this is where innovation and entrepreneurship will help solve some of these problems. And it is the whole state. So we're looking at, case studies, and there's good communication with the state and Zero Waste Sonoma about all the various solutions that other jurisdictions are doing. So it's actually exciting from that perspective. Absolutely. There's a strong education and outreach program that has to go to everyone, residents, businesses, and institutions. So this is something I'm going to be working on, a detailed plan that's not just posters. I'm not a fan of just passive education, but there has to be active education for it to be meaningful. And as well as commercial edible food generators as well, and self-haulers as well. So that's another key group as well. Just a couple more here. So the green procurement program. So 75 of purchased paper products must have recycled content. And this one and the next organics, the whole point is to close the circle, is that some of the demand is, if the demand's not really high, and the value is not very high, then the market for recycled materials is not really there. And our market right now is really in rough shape. So it's helping to prop up or intervene in the market so that there'll be a higher demand for more recycling and better recycling. And so part of that is to get to the procurement. So the city will have to have a procurement program with paper products and some other types of materials. And also materials will have to be recyclable under the Federal Trade Commission's recyclability guidelines. So it can't be just someone claims it's recyclable, it has to meet the specific guidelines.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Yeah, the 30% recycled content requirement, I assume that means post-consumer recycled content, because there's a big difference.
Yes, it does. Yeah. Yes, because they routinely do pre-consumer. That's yeah, absolutely post-consumer. We do have a green purchase policy, but it really needs updating. So this is something that will have to be addressed to meet the requirements. But the foundation is there, which is good. A significant program is, again, it's that closing that market is really driving the demand to help increase the value, because organics and compost really doesn't have a high value, economic I shouldn't say, it doesn't have a high price. It has a high value, but not a high price. And so this is helping to push that. So one of the requirements is each jurisdiction is going to have to purchase either compost or mulch or what's renewable natural gas that's produced from, for example, anaerobic digestion. And there's set requirements, and it's based on a per person or per capita basis. So for Sonoma, it's going to be about 800 tons per year, which is about 1,100 yards. So a city can directly purchase it or indirectly. So if they hire contractors, they can also purchase it. So it can be directly or indirectly. So it's for erosion control, parks, open spaces, and the city can purchase it and give it away as well. It doesn't really matter. And you have to maintain records and report annually. So in 2018, 2019, the Parks Department purchased 32 yards, and it was only 7 yards last year. So the point of that is, and I believe that there's some more that is purchased. We don't have records of that. I'm working on that right now. Just gives you a sense of the gap that's going to have to close, and trying to figure out how this can best be used. And just looking at approximate price, that's going to be about $25,000 per year for that additional, or for the total, for that gap that we have. Yes, Fred?
Isn't mulch like a fire hazard? It's like, combustible?
Only if it's completely dried out. Yeah, I mean, that's something that we would, obviously consider, because we're not gonna, that's the last thing we're gonna do is add to another problem. So this is really, for weed control in parks. So yeah, that's something to look at.
One thing I've noticed about mulch is that people like it when it's fresh and it's a certain color. As soon as it fades away, then they feel like they need to get more. And so there's like a constant appearance issue with mulch that is interesting, that you keep having to have more. So it could work that, but then it ends up becoming really deep. And as a house painter, I know that people pile it up against their house and then it rots the siding on the side of their house because they got so much mulch around their house. But I digress, sorry.
I just want to say that when used properly, the mulch should actually reduce the fire hazard because it will increase soil moisture.
Mm-hmm.
And it should, if used properly, it could, over large areas, actually, should, because soil moisture is a big indicator of fire hazard.
And clearly, when we do this with giveaways or whatever, we would, do our staff would do their research and educate everyone on where and when and how to use it to obviously not cause any other additional problems. So those are great. That's great feedback. The point of this slide is just to, I know people like to see graphics of kind of charts of where we're at. And so if the red part just means that we've got a lot of work to do or nothing exists, the green is we're good to go. And the yellow might be a little hard to distinguish. Yellow and orange is just like orange is and a little bit of work, and orange is a little bit more work. So it just gives you a sort of a report card of where we're at. There's a lot of work that needs to be done for sure. I just want to finish up on a couple kind of outstanding issues and data so you can get a sense of where staff time needs to be addressed. So right now we have no idea about the implementation costs other than the organics and having to ship all material to Napa. There's going to be record keeping and reporting requirements, the food recovery program, education outreach. These are all items that are going to cost. Just not sure how much at this point. So that work will have to be done, as well as compliance monitoring to make sure that generators and the self-haulers and food recovery program are complying with the requirements. Because the city could be potentially held responsible for that. And any issues with enforcement costs as well. So we need more information on the detailed status of procurement of paper and organics. I just ran through the tier 1 and 2 food, commercial food, edible food generators real quick, but we just need to verify that we know all of those based on the list and the size and so forth. So that's won't be too difficult. We have to determine the adequacy, existence, and the capacity of the commercial food recovery program. So that will take some time as well. One of the outstanding questions is the enforcement responsibility is who's going to enforce this. Across the county, jurisdictions are not generally comfortable with doing this enforcement because it's something that has not been done before. That level, so code enforcement that's a big question about that. The county we're looking at the potential county, so this is going to have to be an agreement that's going to have to be discussed and then through a MOU as who's going to have the ultimate enforcement responsibility. There's also substantial record keeping and reporting requirements. So there is a memorandum of understanding that all the jurisdictions are working with Zero Waste Sonoma to take over some of those responsibilities. The question is, how is this going to be funded? That's a big issue. So some of this, so that has to be determined because we have to figure out the costs. Another interesting thing is the short-term and long-term organics management capacity. So there's limited capacity right now. So if everyone, if we see a dramatic shift of organics that was going to the landfill, now going to these compost facilities, what's going to happen? Like I said, there is no facility in Sonoma County. Is that going to impede Sonoma's ability to send it to Napa? We don't know. And is the cost going to increase because there's reduction in capacity? So these are just things that keep me up at night. And there are other, there's always the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns that are lurking there. And we just don't know what those are. So that is the presentation. This is the first presentation I have given. There will be one to City Council. I think it is going to be, I'll tell you, this is going to take probably the biggest consumption of my time over at least the next 6 months is just trying to figure this out and fill in the blanks and start drafting ordinances for consideration and so forth and so on. So if other things don't get done on my list, it's because this is really important, and part of this is because there's hard deadlines and have to be that the city will have to comply with, as well as all the generators and so forth and so on. But if you have any questions or feedback, I'd be glad to answer them and hear it.
Well, let's just start with the if there's any kind of technical issues here about this, and then we'll go to public comment after that. But if anyone have any about the nuts and bolts of this rather than comments at this time. Okay, well, if there's no nuts and bolts, then we'll open this up to public comment.
David was raising his hand.
Yeah,
Okay, so I didn't see him.
I'm not sure it's a nut or a bolt, but having asked for this presentation, I wanted to thank Travis for an excellent presentation. This is complicated stuff. This goes back to AB 939, about 15, even 20 years ago, where we started to have statewide mandates on bottles being and cans. And now we're moving into the organics in a big way. And it's a very big deal. My guess is there's going to be more complexity lying ahead as we dig in further into this. But it's an excellent start for the CSEC to have this much information. Thank you, Travis.
Thank you.
Was that a nut or a bolt, Mr. Chairman?
It's hard to say what that was. But I think it's difficult to discriminate. But things about the particular ordinance or the technical aspects of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, seeing none, then we'll open this up to public comment. Tom?
Thank you. Again, I think this was a great presentation too, and I'm both excited that the state is moving forward with these implementation guidelines, and I mean, we're really fortunate to have Travis here, getting us a small city as Sonoma out in front of the curve with this degree of information. I know this is going to be a big policy because our mayor is. This is an important matter on his personal agenda as well. So I would just reiterate that the Sonoma Valley Climate Coalition is eager to support this process in the outreach and coordination process as it rolls out. Methane is a really big deal in our economy, and I think it's also important to remember that this bill was authored by Ricardo Lara, who's now in charge of our statewide insurance agency, and that's the group that's dealing with all the wildfire impacts. And so there's a lot riding on successful implementation of this policy in California. Because methane is such a destructive, high global warming potential gas. I just have two sort of minor things about the presentation, Travis. I think you mentioned methane having a 25 global warming potential. I think that's an older number from the 2007 era IPCC fourth AR4 report. I believe the newer number is closer to 87. That's how much more the science on global warming has increased. And you may have, I think you're probably aware of that. Just I haven't double checked it during the context of the meeting tonight, but I would just double check that number as you move forward in giving this presentation elsewhere. And then the other thing that just struck me, I think you said that your survey or the requirements of our existing City of Sonoma's existing garbage hauler, they're not able to take non-plant-based food waste in the organics cart. So they can't take meat, scraps, and those kinds of things. However, later in the presentation, I believe you said there was 100% compliance of commercial generators with moving that waste out of the. I may have misunderstood. So I just wanted to maybe I misunderstood and give you an opportunity to comment on that. So if I've not been clear, I'm happy to speak offline as well. Thank you for your consideration of my comment.
I'll just answer those. And yeah, the global warming potential, I actually just pulled that off EPA's website, but they give two different numbers and then they scale it over, it's 10 years versus 100 years. So I know that they scale it. So, but I'll double check the number and make sure I use the most accurate one. And so thanks for that question, Tom, about the you have to look at, it's a difference between residential and commercial. So as a resident, you can't put non-plant-based food waste in your organics container, whereas the commercial generators can, because theirs is collected and all of it's brought to Napa, whereas previously residential waste was brought to what's called a chip and grind facility in Shellville, but there's not a permit to compost that. So that's the difference. And and the 100% compliance rate doesn't mean that they're not putting any organics in their trash. It means that they are that they have the 3 container system. So they are recycling, they are having organics, and they have them in their trash. The question is, are they full compliance, or what's the degree of compliance of people putting organics in their trash? And that's what we don't know, what I don't know, and that's what we'll be looking into. So hopefully that clarifies that. But thank you for the questions.
Any other public comments? See if I see that blue hand come up there by Laura Harvey, maybe. Not seeing any blue hands over there.
There are also no email comments. I just checked.
Thank you, Travis. Okay, so we'll close public comment and bring it back to commissioner comments. Matt?
Yeah, so I had just a couple of questions. Travis, you said there's 100% compliance. Does this mean that multi-unit households now have a 3-bin system in place in town?
Yes, according to Sonoma Garbage, if they're not excluded, and if they have a certain number, then yes, they're saying that they are complying with the mandatory recycling and organics collection.
So I had just a general question. I mean, the goal of this is to reduce organics going into the landfill, correct? And so is to encourage people to sort out, for example, their paper products and green waste and food waste from their garbage containers. And I'm wondering if this could end up having some negative consequences, unexpected consequences. Because what I see is, especially with COVID, people are buying more and more stuff online, and things come in a cardboard box. They take the product out of the cardboard box and they put the cardboard box in the recycling bin without noticing the cardboard box is full of plastic and styrofoam beads, and it has plastic tape all over it. Mm-hmm. So I'm just wondering if this is going to result in greater contamination of the recycling stream.
Yes, probably it will.
And is there any solution to that that's been proposed? Because I'm seeing things like I see from Amazon, they've gone to some of their padded mailers being paper instead of plastic, which is great. And it says on the container, this is 100% recyclable. And I look and it's double-walled paper, but in between the two walls of paper is a layer of styrofoam padding. Nobody's going to separate that and scrape off the so anyway, there's just a lot of confusion on the part of the public, and I'm wondering if there's, the solution, of course, is what they would do in European countries, which is federal legislation, which says you can't say it's recyclable if it's not recyclable. That ain't going to happen in this country. So I'm just wondering what they're going to do, if anybody has any idea about what to do about those problems. So
there's two options or two tracks. One is we continue doing education and outreach to generators. But that only has a certain degree of effectiveness, as we all know. The bigger movement right now is it almost passed in California, and there's other states that are close to consider it, which is extended basically producer responsibility that says if you make it, you have to make sure you're going to pay for it. So it's best that you basically make it recyclable, to really paraphrase it. And it almost passed in California, a number of states. So until something that happens at the state level or federal level, all we have right now is education and outreach. Mm-hmm. But your comment is very well taken.
Any other commissioner comments? Kimberly?
I was going to say, Travis, we need to really reach out to our recycling bin people, because I noticed going up and down our street, there is no instruction on top of any of those cans in terms of what's supposed to go in them or not in them. I mean, maybe there was at one time, but they've been ripped off or they've gone through the weather and they're gone. So people don't know. I mean, when Matt says that, I'm completely guilty of putting, the tape that comes in my cardboard boxes. I just stick it in my recycling. Didn't know that I had to take the tape off, but so there's going to have to be a lot more big, giant visuals so that people get a constant education about it.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, the containers are not currently they're not going to be in compliance, but they're working on universal signage and labels that go on the carts, and those will be on the carts. But yeah, they come off and you need to do that. And the thing about education, you can't do it once, it's constant. So when I develop a plan, that's part of that. And that's actually one of my tasks as a sustainability coordinator is education outreach. I was hoping to get a little bit more, but COVID has pushed on that a little bit, cut that back. But what I would like to offer as well is, if there's any interest, is any group out there that wants to hear a presentation on recycling or the organics, short, whatever, just let me know, because I'll talk to anyone, and I can do it really simple with props or higher level. I'll do it, because that's so important, is to get the word out. And if groups want to hear it, then I'd be glad to talk to anyone. So, keep that in mind, please.
I think you have a good ally in Councilwoman Agramati. This is an issue that she's interested in, is having people recycle properly.
Yeah,
so she might be a good ally for you. I got a couple of questions. You said that you're going to be prioritizing this, and you might not be able to get to other stuff. Is some of that other stuff like the website?
Well, the website is up and functional and everything. I think some people sent some comments.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have not gotten to that. And I'll tell you thus far. Well, first of all, I must, again, state I'm a part-time, so I have limited capacity.
Yeah.
But most of my time has been consumed by the EV charging project and something else I'm going to talk about in my sustainability coordinator update. So I'm always juggling aspects, but also, a prompt and reminder helps move it up the list.
Yeah. How much time do you have left, Travis?
Well, actually, tonight is my 1-year anniversary. So I have one more year. Yeah. So thank you. So yeah, I have 1 year and a lot of work to get the city prepared for January 1st, 2022 on that, and then to deal with these other projects. So yeah,
you'll be staffing the council CSEC ad hoc as well.
Yeah, and just to clarify, it's not an ad hoc; it's a standing committee.
Standing committee.
Yes, but yes, I will be staffing that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, we may be drawing to a close here. Is there any more comments on this item from commissioners? I don't think there's any action on this, is there?
No.
Okay. So why don't we move to commissioner comments? Matt?
I'm unmuted. Yeah, I just want to say regarding the, I'm still going to submit a report regarding the task force on bicycle and pedestrian. So you will be hearing more about that. I just want everybody to know that it isn't like, we're going to completely drop it. So I will be submitting a report.
David?
A quick update from my report from the Sonoma Ecology Center. We've been extremely active in fire response actions with a great deal of success in working with landowners. We've installed several hundred stormwater wattles in fire risk areas to lessen runoff of toxic materials from the fires once we ever get rain again. So that's been a very successful, and we're gearing up more and more on ecological fire thinning. There's a lot of activity in that regard. We've won a nice grant from what's called the North Coast Resource Partnership, which has allowed us to buy 6 metal kilns that are used to turn forest trimming materials up to 4 inches in width and about 4 feet in length in the forest safely into biochar to have it replaced in the forest. So that's going on. And we're in the final stages of now, within a week or two, I hope, negotiating the final contract from CAL FIRE on a $1.2 million contract to install a very sophisticated biochar production machine on Mare Island in Vallejo to work with a firm called A+ Tree that does sustainable trimming of trees, generating about 10 tons per day of wood chips that they've been landfilling. And we're instead going to be able to make about 2 tons per day of biochar from those wood chips. So that's a brief update on a number of the things going on that are high profile from the Ecology Center.
David, we had some tree work done on our property here, and so if you need any wood chips, we got a huge pile of them. They're yours for the taking.
Thank you. Once we prove this machine to be workable, which is like a year out by the time we get it fully proved, I can imagine having more of them. They're not cheap, but the whole machine's about $400K with the ancillary afterburner for air emissions control. Most of the other biochar production machines are about $1.5 million. So it's much, much less. And we're thinking of locating these near forest areas that need to be trimmed for fire safety. And they could accept other chips from fine local generators of wood chips like yourself, Fred.
The question is, who's going to shovel them all into the truck?
normally the landowner.
Well,
Actually, Fred, with that, just one last thought. We're pushing an idea taken from FDR in the 1930s called a CCC, but we're calling it a Carbon Conservation Corps of employees, particularly young employees working potentially for a year after college in this whole process of forest thinning, including shoveling Fred Allebach's wood chips.
with the fire orders, the tree companies, any rural property, those guys just dump all the chips right on the property.
That's what they
So-
do, or they landfill them. It's really awful, and they turn into methane.
Yeah.
So this is all part of the sort of ancillary pieces of 1383, big numbers in this wood chip game and getting bigger.
Any other commissioner comments? Staff comments and reports. Muted, Travis.
I'm going to give Lisa Jansen's in a minute, but so my sustainability coordinator update is I just have two items. One is the energy audit action. So back on November 23rd, staff met with an energy consultant, a mechanical engineer who was funded through a grant from the Bay Area regional, BayREN, I can't remember it. But so this was a grant, and we worked out the ability to have some of our municipal buildings undergo an energy audit. These are not for energy conservation, but it's looking at really for potential electrification or heating, cooling, and energy production. So we did an audit of the Courtyard, City Hall, the Carnegie Library, and the police department. So again, the focus was to identify opportunities to reduce electricity consumption through lighting, heating, cooling, and hot water, and also to identify potential locations for increased solar PV production. In addition, we assessed the Depot Park History Museum because staff is continuing to investigate a potential to switch to an electric heat pump for heating and cooling in light of the gas line incident, which there is no gas there, and so they have no heat. So this is something we're working on. So we took that opportunity to look at the potential for a heat pump system, which is all electric, because the gas line replacement is going to be quite expensive. And so that's the question is which way we're going to go. And actually, about an hour before this meeting, we got the specs from the consultant, basically outlining what type of unit or system would work best for that. So if the city proceeds, they'll have to go out to bid or whatever. And that was fast tracked because of the issue there. But the other buildings, we should be getting a report by the end of the year as to, again, how we can reduce electricity and obviously greenhouse gas. And especially they're looking at any ways to reduce natural gas consumption. The other issue, another issue I'm working on is the CRV grants. So as you all know, the California's bottle redemption program has basically failed. Sonoma County is one of the top most underserved counties with regards to redemption center. There's only one right now in Petaluma. So there's recognition that major structural changes in the law need to occur. I think they just appointed someone new and to look at some major changes so it can get this law, the program in functioning again as well. But that's not going to be easy. That takes some time. But in the meantime, Cal Recycle has considerable money that they're providing grants to help come up with some innovative solutions at the community level. So Zero Waste Sonoma has partnered with 5 cities in the county, and they applied for a grant, and we did find out that it was funded. And what this grant is going to do is it's going to install self-service kiosks in each of these cities as a low-cost automated redemption option. These have been used they actually were developed in Maine. They've been adopted in New York, and they're used, I believe, in Oregon as well. So they're, and I've used one many times when I lived in Maine, so they're actually a great system. The challenge is we have not found a location yet. The property owners of all 4 supermarket grocery stores declined to participate, and available city property is very limited. So right now, we've been in discussions with Sonoma County on county property within the city as a possible host. So I know that there's a meeting, I think, the end of this week, so we might get word if that's a possibility. That concludes my report. I'd be glad to answer any questions on those 2 items or any other thing.
Matt?
Yeah, I just am very disappointed that the supermarkets won't, they sell the CRVs, but they won't cite the CRV redemption. I'm wondering if there's any city, if the city has any clout with them in terms of their, a ordinance to make that a requirement of their business license, to say if you're going to sell more than so many CRVs per year, you have to participate in a CRV collection program.
Well, it's also an indication of the failure, which I guess is my opinion, of the state system, in which basically, you don't really have to, it's a problem. One of the issues is the supermarkets don't necessarily own the property. So in some cases, it's private property owners and leasing to the supermarkets, which causes an issue. And I don't believe that the city has the authority to do that, because it's a state requirement. So again, it points to the need for significant structural changes in the state law. Bottle bills work fine in other states. California's approach has not worked for various reasons, mainly the cost of property and labor, and not sufficient return on the handling fees.
Any more staff comments from Wendy?
Travis.
Wendy's not there anymore?
Oh, she's there.
I'm here. I have no comment. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think that concludes our meeting this evening. So thanks everyone for showing up.
Actually,
Travis?
not yet. I do have the Lisa Jansen's update.
Oh, sorry.
That she sent to me. And it's a little bit more, there's a couple of other things going on that I think are highly relevant that she wanted to put forth. So I'm going to read this because it's on my phone, but sorry. So this is her speaking. So first, I just want to mention that I miss seeing you and participating in the CSEC. 2020 has been quite a year. I've had the good fortune to still be working and have been deployed to work on numerous projects here in the city of Sonoma. This spring, I spent a lot of time working on food security. Over the summer and fall, I've spent a lot of time working on businesses reopening. I'm recently transitioning again and have been appointed to new projects that will help me engaging with you on a more regular basis. I hope you find my update below useful. I look forward to seeing you and working with you again in the near future. Due to COVID-19 pandemic, all events have been canceled for 2020. Under current public health order, large gatherings and events are not allowed. City staff is going to take a wait and see approach to approving any events for the calendar year 2021. If the public health officer starts to ease restrictions and there's an opportunity for events to occur in 2021, we will start approving events. In the interim, I have spoken to most of the event organizers and have discussed holding dates for their annual events. Due to the uncertainty surrounding the pandemic, some event organizers have expressed desire to move their events into the late summer fall 2021 time frame. It's still too early to tell if we will have the opportunity to have events in 2021. I've been working closely with the Farmers Market team, Sonoma Valley Chamber, and Christopher Welch. We have an agenda item on next Monday's City Council meeting to report back on the 2020 modified Farmers Market with a proposal for the operations of a modified 2021 Farmers Market. Regarding Parks and Recreation, I'm working closely with the city manager and Karen Collins. We have some ideas on how to proceed with the Parks and Recreation's 2-year work plan. The CSCC will definitely play an advisory role in this project. The city team will be bringing forth an agenda item at Monday's city council meeting that outlines the next steps, key holders, advisory roles, and a draft of a 2-year work plan. The agenda for Monday's meeting will be coming out tomorrow. I'm looking forward to working again with you soon. Happy holidays, Lisa Jansen.
I have a question about that, Travis. In terms of staffing that at the CSAC, if you're the sustainability coordinator, would you end up staffing that something that had to do with Parks and Rec, or would some other city staff step in to do that so that your time wasn't taken by that?
I can't say definitively. It was my interpretation, and I'll just caveat it by the interpretation that Lisa was going to be the staff person on that parks aspect.
Hopefully that would be so, and that you could concentrate on your main mission.
Garbage.
Climate.
The good, well, climate, yes.
Okay. Are we all done? Okay, well, let's adjourn the meeting, and it's good to see you all, and see you all next month.
Good meeting, Fred.
Yeah,
Right.
thank you, Fred.
Hey, Fred.
Thank you, everybody.
Mr. Chairman,
Safe, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Bye-bye.
happy holidays all.
Hanukkah. Happy Christmas. Hanukkah.